What happens when a young man, just 18 years old, faces public humiliation in a room full of the nation's most powerful people? What he did next didn't just silence the crowd, it left the entire world talking. This is the story of how Barron Trump turned an uncomfortable moment into a powerful lesson in respect, dignity, and grace. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss this. When a journalist mocked Barron Trump at a charity gala, no one anticipated how his calm response would steal the show. The ballroom at the Fairmont Grand Hotel was mesmerizing, adorned with crystal chandeliers that shimmered above elegantly dressed attendees. The quiet hum of conversation added to the grandeur of the annual charity gala. Among the crowd were some of the nation's most influential figures, business moguls, actors, and journalists, gathered to support a foundation dedicated to underprivileged youth. The atmosphere was charged with energy and anticipation as the evening's keynote speaker prepared to take the stage. Seated inconspicuously toward the back was Barron Trump. At just 18 years old, his tall frame and composed demeanor made him stand out unintentionally. Invited by a family friend, Barron's presence was a quiet gesture to introduce him to a different social circle. Unlike many attendees who thrived in the spotlight, Barron seemed content to observe. His piercing blue eyes scanned the room with a calmness that belied his age, reflecting a maturity uncommon for someone so young. The gala proceeded smoothly. A string quartet played softly in the background as waitstaff glided between tables, serving hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Warm conversations and ripples of laughter filled the air. Yet, it was evident that the highlight of the evening was the much-anticipated keynote speech. The speaker, a prominent journalist celebrated in liberal media circles, was known for their sharp wit and bold opinions. Revered by some and criticized by others, they promised an address that would challenge perspectives and ignite thought. As the MC introduced the journalist, a shift swept over the room. Conversations faded, glasses were set down, and all eyes turned to the stage. Barron leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression unreadable. The journalist approached the podium with a confident smile, their sleek black suit adding to their charismatic presence. Polite applause greeted them, but an undercurrent of expectation lingered in the room. Would they push boundaries as they often did? The journalist began effortlessly, their tone conversational and laced with humor. They joked about the city's notorious traffic and shared a lighthearted anecdote about a past gala mishap involving a toppled champagne tower. Laughter rippled through the crowd, easing some initial tension. For a moment, it felt like any other high-profile event, polished, predictable, and harmless. But then, the tone shifted. What started as general commentary on politics and culture took a pointed turn, delving into critiques of well-known political figures. Their jabs drew mixed reactions, some chuckles, some tightening smiles. Then, the focus landed squarely on Donald Trump. Well, we can't talk about the state of the world without mentioning the man who made orange the new black, the journalist quipped, drawing scattered laughter. Love him or hate him, you have to admit he's the gift that keeps on giving for people like me. The response from the crowd was mixed. Some laughed openly, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Barron, sitting quietly at his table, remained still, his expression unreadable. If the journalists noticed his presence, they didn't let on, at least not yet. The jabs continued, each sharper than the last. The journalist mocked Trump's policies, tweets, and public appearances. But the laughter in the room began to thin, replaced by a growing unease among the attendees. And, of course, the journalist said, pausing dramatically, we can't forget his most overlooked legacy, the next generation. I mean, let's talk about Barron. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Heads turned toward Barron, who sat motionless, now the center of attention. The journalist's tone remained playful, but their words carried a sting. Imagine growing up in a golden tower, surrounded by marble everything, and your dad tweeting about Kovfef while the rest of us are just trying to survive Monday mornings. That must have been character building. The attempt at humor fell flat. A few chuckled nervously, but most sat in stunned silence. The unasked-for spotlight had landed squarely on Barron. Yet, instead of crumbling under the pressure, Barron remained composed. His calmness in the face of this unexpected moment would soon leave the room in awe. The room seemed to hold its breath, all eyes fixed on Barron Trump. The journalist's cutting words lingered in the air, heavy and tense. But Barron didn't flinch. He didn't shift in his chair or glance around nervously. Instead, he sat perfectly still, his expression calm but unreadable. His hands rested lightly on the edge of the table. The silence grew louder with each passing second. Uneasy glances were exchanged, and even the journalist's confident smirk faltered slightly as they glanced toward Barron's table. Perhaps they had expected a laugh or a dismissive shrug, anything but this quiet defiance. Barron's stillness was not born of indifference. It was something else entirely. His understated yet commanding presence seemed to grow as the moment stretched on. The room, once alive with laughter and conversation, now felt oppressively quiet. Even those who had chuckled at the jokes appeared to realize the weight of what had been said. His silence wasn't just an absence of words, it was a powerful statement. It seemed to say, "I hear you, I see you, and I am not moved." A faint murmur broke the tension as someone near the stage whispered to their companion. The journalist cleared their throat, attempting to regain control of the moment. "Tough crowd," they muttered into the microphone, forcing a laugh that no one echoed. The tension was thick, wrapping around the room like an invisible fog. And then Barron moved. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed back his chair and stood. The soft scrape of the chair legs against the floor was the only sound in the room. At just over 6 feet tall, Barron was an imposing figure, his height matched by an aura of unexpected maturity. He looked out at the crowd, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on the journalist. Barron didn't need to speak. His presence alone commanded attention, silencing even the faintest whispers at the back of the room. He stepped away from his table, walking toward the stage with measured steps. His posture was straight, unwavering. The journalist froze, their earlier confidence evaporating as Barron approached. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and anticipation. No one knew what he would say or do, but one thing was certain. This young man was about to own the moment. As Barron reached the edge of the stage, the room seemed to hold its breath. He stopped a few feet from the podium, standing tall and composed. With a steady, deliberate voice he spoke, his words cutting through the silence like a blade. "Thank you for your insight," he began, his tone calm but firm. His choice of words caught everyone off guard. There was no anger, no trace of indignation, only an eerie sense of control that seemed far beyond his years. "I've grown up watching people make assumptions about me, my family, and my life," Barron continued, his piercing gaze fixed on the journalist. "But behind every assumption there is a human being, someone with their own struggles, their own dreams, and their own story. You may think you know me because of who my father is, but you don't. Not really." The journalist, who had been gripping the edge of the podium, now seemed visibly uncomfortable. Barron's words weren't an attack. They were a mirror, reflecting back the weight of what had just occurred. "What I've learned," Barron said, pausing for a moment, "is that respect doesn't have to be earned. It should be given freely, especially when you don't know someone's story." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd, but Barron wasn't finished. He turned slightly, addressing the audience as much as the journalist. "We live in a time where it's easy to tear each other down," he said, his voice steady but filled with quiet conviction. "Words have power. They can hurt, or they can heal. They can divide, or they can unite. And I think we could all use a little more of the latter." The audience was spellbound, every word spoken with calm resolve. Barron's words carried a weight that transcended his age. It was evident that he wasn't just addressing a fleeting moment. He was speaking to something far greater, something universal. After a brief pause, he took a step back, his gaze once again locking with the journalist's. "I hope this gives you something to think about," he said softly. There was no malice in his voice, only a quiet strength that left the room in awe. He turned and began walking back to his seat, the soft clicks of his shoes on the polished floor, the only sound in the stunned silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the journalist remained frozen, their earlier bravado completely dissolved. As Barron sat down, the applause began. Hesitant at first, a single clap near the front of the room, but it grew quickly, spreading like wildfire. Within moments, the entire ballroom rose to its feet in a thunderous standing ovation. Some clapped with admiration, others with a sense of redemption for the awkwardness that had dominated just minutes earlier. The journalist, still standing at the podium, attempted a faint smile, but it was clear the moment no longer belonged to them. Back at his table, Barron remained composed, offering only a polite nod to those around him. It wasn't humility or shyness. It was the quiet assurance of someone who had said exactly what needed to be said. Within hours, snippets of the moment began flooding social media. Attendees had discreetly recorded Barron's speech, and the footage spread like wildfire. Tweets, Instagram stories, and TikTok clips captured the essence of the evening, with captions ranging from admiration for Barron's composure to critiques of the journalist's misplaced humor. "Barron Trump just schooled an entire room on class and respect," read one viral tweet. Another post, shared by a prominent celebrity in attendance, declared, "No matter what you think of his family, this young man just gave us all something to think about." The next morning, news outlets picked up the story. Some praised Barron for his maturity, calling it a defining moment for someone who had spent much of his life under the shadow of public scrutiny. Others debated the ethics of the journalist's remarks, questioning whether public figures, especially young ones, should ever be fair game for such commentary. The journalist, for their part, issued a statement the following day. "Comedy and commentary are powerful tools, but they must be wielded responsibly. Last night I crossed a line and I apologized to Barron Trump for my remarks." Not everyone accepted the apology at face value. Talk shows, podcasts, and online forums buzzed with heated debates about the incident. Some argued that Barron's speech was a much-needed call for civility in an increasingly polarized world. Others saw it as a poignant reminder that even public figures are human beings deserving of respect. For Barron, however, the frenzy of attention seemed irrelevant. He returned to his daily life with the same quiet dignity that had defined his response, leaving an indelible mark on those who had witnessed the moment. At the gala, those who knew Barron said he barely acknowledged the uproar, choosing instead to focus on his studies and personal interests. While Barron moved on with quiet grace, the lessons from that night lingered, sparking conversations that extended far beyond the ballroom. As the dust settled, the ripple effects of the gala continued to echo. News outlets eventually shifted their attention to other stories, but the moment lived on in discussions at dinner tables, classrooms, and offices. People dissected the evening not only for its drama, but for the powerful lessons it imparted. Barron's calm and thoughtful response struck a chord. In an age dominated by outrage and instant reactions, his poise and perspective were a refreshing anomaly. Many began drawing parallels to their own lives, asking, how often do we pause before reacting? How often do we choose words that build instead of destroy? For some, the incident served as a wake-up call, highlighting how easily we dehumanize others in the name of humor, politics, or entertainment. The journalist's comments stood as a stark reminder of the power of words, not just to entertain, but to wound. Parents used the moment as a teaching opportunity for their children. Videos of Barron's speech became tools in classrooms to discuss respect, empathy, and the importance of standing up for oneself without tearing others down. Teachers praised Barron's grace in addressing conflict, encouraging students to think critically about how they communicate. Yet the most profound impact of the night was its ability to bridge divides, even if only briefly. People from different political beliefs and walks of life found themselves united in admiration for Barron's maturity. It wasn't about his last name or his father's legacy. It was about a young man demonstrating that respect and empathy still have a place in the world, even in the face of provocation. By choosing to respond with kindness and integrity, Barron reminded everyone in that room, and countless others watching from afar, that dignity is a choice. No matter how heated or polarized a situation may become, there is always power in choosing to rise above. As the conversations continued, one sentiment resonated most. Words can wound, but they can also heal. It's up to each of us to decide how we use them. Barron's actions,